We're not negotiating. League and the ratings are an embarrassment. They're a statement about how little interest there actually is in women's basketball beyond Caitlin Clark. People that have started a competitor to the WNBA are leading the negotiations for a new WNBA contract. The fact that they can't reach a CBA agreement and be confident that there's actually going to be a 2026 season of the WNBA because these idiots, Angel Reese and the rest are like, oh man, if y'all not paying us $1 million, $2 million a season. This group of women, delusional.
Those ratings tell a rough story. The numbers are not just bad, they are brutal, and they reveal something the WNBA Power Circle does not want to say out loud. Without Caitlin Clark, the eyeballs disappear, the crowd fades, the attention drops off fast, and it gets messier from there. The same players who tied their rise to her buzz and bigger checks are now talking about shutting down the entire 2026 season. The demand is NBA-level money while games are being played in half-empty buildings, and that math just does not line up. Let's slow this down and really look at it. The league has already put 7-figure contracts on the table. 7 figures to play roughly 40 games in a league that loses millions every year.
Nope, not good enough. We're not budging. We're not negotiating. The entire season is up for grabs. And here's how they got there. This group of women, delusional, allowed Nafisa Collier, whose husband and her and Breanna Stewart have started a rival league to the WNBA. They've allowed them to be the leaders of their negotiation for a new CBA agreement.
The response from some players has been, not good enough, we're not negotiating, and we're not budging. That hard stance has the full season on shaky ground, driven by Angel Reese and others who believe superstar pay should come first, no matter what the business can actually handle. Here's the part flying under the radar. The person steering these talks is not some distant, neutral union voice. Think about that for a second. Nafisa Collier, whose husband runs the unrivaled league, a direct competitor to the WNBA, is leading the collective bargaining negotiations for WNBA players. Breanna Stewart is not on the sidelines here. She is locked in alongside her business partner, helping push a separate league while also holding influence over talks that will decide where the WNBA goes next.
People that have started a competitor to the WNBA are leading the negotiations for a new WNBA contract. This is insanity and retardation that we have never seen.
That overlap alone sets off alarms. It mirrors a world where a star player helps write league rules while quietly building a rival brand behind the scenes. This is not just about blurred lines. It looks like the system being pulled in 2 directions at once, with players cheering it on under the banner of empowerment, even when the setup clearly benefits only a select few. This moment is especially big for Nafisa Collier. She is stepping forward as a voice for change, framing herself as someone who sees what is wrong at the top and knows how to fix it.
Let's replay Nafisa Collier when she was talking tough and everybody's applauding her. You go, girl. Kathy Engelbert, they're not paying you guys what you're worth, and we're not paying Caitlin Clark what she's worth. Play the
league believes it succeeds despite its players, not because of them. I have the privilege of watching my husband run a league where he has to balance 100 different things at once. I won't pretend the job is easy, but even with all of that on his plate, he always takes the time to reach out to players when he sees an injury, whether it's unrivaled or even during the WNBA season. That is what leadership looks like. It's the human element. It's basic integrity, and it's the bare minimum any leader should embody.
Her main issue with Commissioner Kathy Engelbert has been made very clear. The complaint centers on personal attention, specifically that injured players do not receive direct calls. That is presented as the ultimate sign of failed leadership, serious enough to justify destabilizing the entire league. At the same time, praise flows toward Collier's husband, who runs a separate league that attracted around 30,000 viewers for its biggest game, largely because he sends supportive messages and public shoutouts. That contrast says a lot. Feelings are being elevated above financial reality, and optics are being treated as strategy. The numbers, however, do not bend to a
It's all feelings over facts. It's there's no logic here. Hey, just pay us what we want. I don't want to hear about paying us what's sustainable. Just pay us what we want. We feel like we're owed this amount of money. And we've convinced America that 23 and 24-year-old women coming out of college, that paying them $70,000, $80,000 a year for a 4-month job.
emotion. Here is the grounding truth. A rookie earning roughly $70,000 for a short season right after college is not being mistreated. It is not abuse or proof of a broken system. For many college graduates, that income would be life-changing, especially in a league that continues to lose money year after year. The constant comparison to men's leagues is not accidental, and it is deeply misleading. NBA rookies earn millions because that league pulls in billions. The WNBA does not. It runs in the red and stays alive through outside support. That financial gap changes everything, even if some people refuse to acknowledge it. History makes this clearer. There were industries that paid almost nothing while still turning a profit. In this case, the league is losing millions every year while still paying rookies around $75,000 for a short season. That includes housing, travel, and benefits. One situation reflects real exploitation. The other reflects players being paid despite the business bleeding money on their behalf. Some players have convinced themselves that operating at a loss for their benefit is some kind of moral obligation. That belief is where ideology starts overriding logic. Once the argument becomes equal pay, no matter what, regardless of revenue, viewership, or basic math, reality gets pushed aside. At that point, decisions stop being about sustainability and start being driven by emotion and entitlement. You cannot build a long-term business on vibes alone. The numbers always catch up. To be fair, not everything coming from Nafisa Collier is wrong. She is talented, comes from a solid background, and built a strong career through hard work. The issue is the circle around her. Too many voices are reinforcing her weakest ideas instead of grounding them in facts. Now, she is leading negotiations that could seriously damage the very league that gave her a platform.
But she's nuts. And she's surrounded by other nuts that are confirming her nuttiness. She's gonna sit here and preach. And again, I'm not a big defender of Kathy Engelbert because she's a nut too. But sitting there holding a press conference scolding them because your husband is the president of the unrivaled league and he's now smarter than her and he knows more about what to do than her. Are you kidding me? It's crazy.
The irony is that Commissioner Kathy Engelbert does deserve criticism, just not for the reasons being shouted the loudest. The real failure was allowing fantasy to replace honesty, and pretending the league's financial reality did not matter until it reached this breaking point. This is the moment where it hits close to home for a lot of fans, including me. Caitlin Clark had a clear lane this season to be the steady voice everyone was waiting on. She could have acknowledged the obvious, that some of these demands clash with what the league can realistically pay, and that the current level of financial backing is something players did not have in the past. Instead of setting that tone, she stayed quiet, and that absence was impossible to ignore.
I don't really care about Caitlin Clark anymore because she's halfway crazy for not coming on air somewhere and saying the things that I'm saying. Hey man, y'all crazy. We better take this contract they offered us and be thankful because it's all from the private flights to the salaries we're getting paid. It's all charity. It's all welfare. And let's be appreciative. And then once we start making real money, then we'll go for the stupid superstar contracts like the NBA players have. But we're not there yet.
That silence matters. By staying quiet, she allowed Nafisa Collier and Angel Reese to steer the conversation straight toward the edge, without pushback. When someone with that much influence refuses to speak, it stops looking neutral and starts looking like quiet approval. That makes it harder for fans to keep defending a star who will not defend the league that signs her checks. Now we are watching the next predictable phase roll out. High-profile campaigns and commercials tied to broader social messaging start taking center stage. The focus shifts toward ideas about self-definition, rejecting limits, and reshaping systems around personal identity rather than clear standards. This is not happening in isolation. It is the same mindset repeating itself across different issues. Objective reality gets treated like an obstacle, while personal feelings are framed as unquestionable truth. The expectation becomes that systems must bend first, instead of individuals adapting to how those systems actually work. When any organization is built on the idea that feelings outweigh facts, identity outweighs performance, and ideology outweighs economics, the foundation stays weak. You can dress it up with slogans, and slogans sound nice, but underneath, it is unstable. Structures built that way do not fall overnight, but they always collapse eventually. This is what makes the situation sting the most. The league was handed a rare window this season. Caitlin Clark pulled in attention the WNBA had never seen before. Viewership jumped, arenas filled up, and major media finally treated the games like must-watch events. That momentum could have been turned into something stable, something that actually lasted, and a real path toward long-term growth was sitting right there. Instead, it slipped away. Internal resentment was allowed to boil over and spill onto the court and social media. The league let its most marketable player take constant shots while doing nothing to control the narrative. Racial grievance talk took over headlines, and union leadership with obvious conflicts was allowed to steer negotiations straight into chaos. Now the threat of a shutdown hangs over everything, and that kind of pause can permanently damage a fragile product. Here is what keeps getting overlooked. Fan loyalty in women's basketball is thin. It is not passed down through generations like the NBA. It is not woven into American culture in the same way. A huge chunk of this season's audience showed up for Caitlin Clark herself, not for the league as a whole. If a 2026 season never happens, those casual fans will not wait around. They will find something else to watch. What remains would be the small, dedicated base that existed before Clark arrived. The ratings from the unrivaled league make that clear. Roughly 30,000 viewers tuned in for a championship game featuring players labeled as the biggest names. That is not a meaningful television audience. It shows exactly how limited the draw becomes once the league's main infrastructure and spotlight disappear. Most of these players have very limited individual draw, and that is the uncomfortable truth no one wants to touch. Outside of Caitlin Clark, the market just is not there. Yet Napheesa Collier, coming off a moment where her husband's league showed just how shallow the audience really is, now sits at the center of negotiations that will shape the WNBA's future. She is pushing for salary levels that would only make sense if viewership suddenly multiplied many times over, something the data simply does not support.
They want to decide things that God has decided. It's not about you. And so if you're a Christian, or if you have a brain, you consult the maker, the owner, the creator. You let him define you. You wonder why things around them are collapsing? They think they're the makers. They think they're the creators. They think they're their own gods. And that's why everything that they build collapses. And that's why women's sports are going to collapse, because the delusion of women, the whole feelings over facts and logic.
She is also floating the idea of shutting down an entire season if those demands are not met. Somehow, that approach is being framed by others as bold leadership. In reality, it is what happens when empowerment slogans replace basic financial understanding. When demanding more money becomes confused with deserving more money. When confidence gets mistaken for competence, and loud opinions get treated like proof. The comparison to low-wage industries was never about disrespecting anyone's value. It was about understanding how markets work. Some industries paid unfairly low wages but remained profitable, which meant those jobs, flawed as they were, could continue. The WNBA pays relatively high wages while losing millions every year. That makes the system unstable, even if the pay still feels insufficient to some players. One model can survive, the other cannot. Pointing this out is not an attack on women, and it is not bias. It is the same logic applied to any business, anywhere. When expenses are higher than revenue, there are only a few options. You cut costs, grow income, or shut the doors. There is no secret option where losses go on forever just because people feel undervalued. The NBA has kept the WNBA afloat for years, largely out of goodwill and a genuine effort to grow the women's game. But that support has limits. If players force a shutdown and signal that no level of backing will ever be enough, the NBA would be justified in stepping back. At that point, the league would have to stand on its own, and that would mean facing a reality it has avoided for a long time. This is the moment where hard choices replace slogans. The players are staring at a fork in the road, and there is no neutral option left. Doubling down on personal grievances might feel satisfying in the short term, but it risks burning down the only stage most of them have. The numbers from alternative leagues already showed how shallow the audience becomes without the WNBA brand behind it. If the league disappears, so does the spotlight. For the majority of players, there is no backup platform waiting in the wings, no massive fan base ready to follow them elsewhere. This is not a landscape where stars can break off and instantly command national attention. It is a small market with limited reach, and recognizing that is not disrespect, it is honesty. That honesty demands restraint and strategy, not emotional brinkmanship. The WNBA created an environment that allowed these athletes to be paid, promoted, and supported in ways that would not naturally exist in a strict free market. Preserving that structure should matter more than winning a public standoff. Instead, the approach has turned into pressure campaigns and ultimatums, guided by voices that benefit from chaos more than stability. Admitting this strategy might be flawed would require stepping away from a mindset that treats every demand as morally untouchable. So the push continues. The threats stay on the table. Negotiations move further from compromise. And if everything eventually collapses, the story will be framed as betrayal from the outside rather than mistakes from within. The real issue is not whether players want more, but whether they are willing to sacrifice the future of the league to prove a point today. This is where the story lands, whether people like it or not. The WNBA is not fighting the outside world right now. It is fighting gravity. Numbers, attention, and money all move in one direction when reality is ignored, and no amount of branding can stop that for long. This was a moment that demanded clarity, discipline, and leadership grounded in facts. What it got instead was ego, ideology, and power plays that treated the league like it was indestructible. It is not. Leagues survive because fans care, investors believe, and decisions respect the limits of the business. When any one of those breaks, the whole thing shakes. None of this means women's basketball cannot grow. It means growth requires honesty. It requires patience. It requires knowing when to push and when to protect what already exists. Burning leverage does not create leverage. Silence does not equal strength. And pretending losses do not matter does not make them disappear. The next chapter will be written soon, one way or another. Either the league recalibrates and learns from this moment, or it keeps sprinting toward a cliff while calling it progress. If you want the unfiltered breakdowns, the behind-the-scenes moves, and the stuff nobody else wants to say out loud, follow Courtside Leaks. This story is far from over, and the real consequences are just starting to show. We've got every angle covered, every leak, every backstage twist, every moment they won't show you. Hit like, subscribe, drop a comment, and share this video. Stay locked in with Courtside Leaks, your home for the truth behind the WNBA.